I'm going to do another quick video of my timber flooring project, and as you can see, it's coming along really nicely. I'm using black butt here, and it really is a beautiful, very solid, very hard timber. And you can see that this is a pretty big room to do it, and the kitchen has already been installed, which is unfortunate. Always try to do your floor before your kitchen. It's a hell of a lot easier when all that stuff isn't in the way. But anyway, I did half of it before the kitchen was in. Now I have to do the other half with the kitchen is up and installed. But anyway, I'll get to that. But in a big room like this, I saw a video that says you really, and I think it's a really good tip, is what you need to do is start from the halfway point of your room. Find the halfway point. But the halfway point in a room that's not square is different from one end of the room to the other one. So what you need to do, so that you don't just start at the edge of the room thinking that it's all nice and square, and then by the time you get to the end, you might be, a sliver of timber that is, 2 centimeters there and maybe 7 centimeters there, and it would look really terrible. So what you try to do is even out that non-squaredness, if that's a word, so that you find the midpoint of your room by literally measuring from one end of the room to the other end, and let's say it's 6 meters, so you make a line right at 6, at 3 meter point. And then over here, this end of the room, if it's a slightly out of square room, it might be 6 meters and 5 centimeters. So you've got a it wouldn't be 5 centimeters, that's a bit much. Well, let's say it's 6 meters and 2 centimeters. So you don't want 2 centimeter difference over at one end and 0 at the other. So you want to split it. So you want to have a 1 centimeter difference there, 1 centimeter difference there, and by the time you put skirting on top of it, you probably won't even notice. So what you do is measure this end of the room, and if it's 6 meters and 2 centimeters, you'd mark a line at the 3 meter, 1 centimeter mark. So right in the middle of that distance as such. You then get a chalk line and flick a line down the center there, or if you want to get really fancy, get yourself a rotating laser that can be put up on edge. That's what I did. And you actually screw down, when you're starting, you actually screw down, and that's what these bits are for, you actually screw down a piece of timber like so, screw it down right on that center line, so that when you're laying the timbers against it, they're not going to get pushed out of the way. So you basically push them up against that timber, so that, and you screw them down. You actually put screws in it. Okay, so I didn't show you this the first stuff. I probably should have taken a video earlier. But yeah, you screw this down first. Screw down a piece of timber, not an actual good piece. Don't waste timber. Just your ply that you've used in the underlay. Screw it down right on that center line, right down the whole length of the room. Now I did scribe in some texture mark. You can see a texture mark there. I drew that right down the center of the entire room, so I knew exactly where the center line was. So that's what I put my center line to. Now after the halfway is finished, you can take that away and start laying it the other way. Luckily, this room is incredibly square, which is incredibly rare, believe it or not, in the building industry. I don't know if you can see that little strip there. That's exactly 4 centimeters wide, that last strip that I had to cut in. And believe it or not, that's 4 centimeters all the way along with a 10 millimeter gap. You always got to leave a 10 millimeter gap around your edges to allow for expansion of your timbers. Likewise on these ends, at the ends, there's a 10 millimeter gap. That gets covered by your architrave, of course, but very important to leave that, otherwise you will get bowing and popping of your timbers up. Now once you get to the halfway mark, of course you're laying your timbers all in the one direction, like this direction, so that you have your groove at one end and your tongue at this end, and that's the direction that is the entire floor is laid for half of it. But when you go the other way, you still want to be laying against the tongue. So you have to flip these timbers around. However, that means that when you start putting these timbers back here to the next one, you've got a groove there, and your next timber is likewise likewise going to have a groove. And that basically is no good because sure you can nail that down, but if there's any expansion, which there will be, and any undue pressure, all of a sudden there's no tongue to hold that in place, and that's just going to pop. That will just pop up because there's nothing holding it in place. So the answer to that is a spline. Okay, so you have to cut or manufacture. I think you can buy them somewhere, but I just made my own. You basically, I had some leftover. Now you've got to make this out of a hardwood. Okay, I'm putting a hardwood, and you really got to make it out of a hardwood that's equivalent to the flooring that you're using. So I actually had some Tassie oak lying around, so that's a hardwood as well. Don't use pine or some rubbish like that. That's might as well do the good stuff. And basically I just had myself a little one of these table saws that from Bunnings cost all of $100, and just setting it, and they're damn accurate. I've got to say, I'm really impressed with how accurate you can get these down to. I don't know if you can see these millimeters, but you can get it down to 6 millimeters, and that's exactly what I did. And that's how wide a tongue is. So you strip down, you have to make them about 18 millimeters. Check the timber that you're using, obviously. I had to make mine 18 millimeters wide by 6 millimeters thick. So I just made these on the table saw, and then very easily what I do is put in some old construction glue into the groove, and then I've done this one here. You just put in your tongue that you've manufactured, slide it in there like so after you've got the glue in there, and then you can proceed to put your next bits of timber like so. So, and then that will stop it from popping out if there's any pressures, etc. So that's how you put in a spline. That's how you do a really big room with some hardwood timbers. This is blackbutt. I can't recommend it enough. It really is beautiful. It feels so solid and warm under your feet. However, it's still timber, so if you drop a glass, it has at least an opportunity to not smash, unlike a tile cold floor. So highly recommend it. It's not cheap anymore, unfortunately. Timber is very expensive, but I think the end result, and this isn't polished or sanded yet, this is timber that's been aged in this building for 7 or 8 years now. So you can see all the marks where, you know, one piece of timber was lying on top of the other, and this one got the air, this one didn't. So when that gets sanded out, it's going to be absolutely gorgeous, and then of course there's going to be a varnish put on top of it. So I'll send a video, I'll make a video of when that is finished as well. So coming along nicely. If you have any comments, please feel free. I love talking to people, so let me know if you have any questions or comments, and see you on the next one.